Hey you, and welcome back to Juju. Today I'm going to show you how to build your own mechanical keyboard. So let's get straight into it right now on Juju. Okay, so the first thing I want you to do is get your ass on that computer because we need to search for a keyboard kit. Because you're just getting into the hobby, you probably don't know what parts to buy, and I don't want you to be buying parts and finding out they don't work with each other. So let's stick with this simple tutorial, and I want you to find a keyboard kit from KBD Fans, Rama, or anyone else in the description, like Novel Keys as well. So go check them out below. You'll end up like me if you just rush into it and you just buy these parts which won't even work with the keyboard you're trying to make, wasting your valuable time and your money. Hey, I've got the Tofu 96 from KBD Fans, which is an awesome mechanical keyboard, metal, and it's very reasonably priced. So in the kit, you usually get 4 things, okay? You get stabilizers, you get the case, you get the PCB, which is this, and you also get a switch plate, which allows you to put the switches and make your PCB much more rigid. So everything I talk about today will be in the description below, so don't be afraid to go check that out after this video. Now, to make a full keyboard, however, you also need 2 more things: your switches and your keycaps. You may also need some lube, okay? And we use this to lube your switches and to also lube the stabilizers to make the keyboard much more smoother and much more robust. Some quick tips when you're buying a mechanical keyboard kit. Firstly, you want to know about the keyboard size. This is a 100% mechanical keyboard, which means it's a full-size keyboard. All keyboards look like this, and you've probably seen one at work or, you know, those typical gaming keyboards. Most people are buying today is a 60% mechanical keyboard kit, and this is 60%. You can see the difference straight away, right? It's essentially this cut in half. The only reason why everyone's buying this instead of the bigger keyboards is because it gets expensive. The larger you go, the more expensive it costs to make a metal keyboard, or, you know, the parts required to make a keyboard. And trust me, if you're a beginner, I think a 60% is a great start for you. It's really budget friendly, and it's a great way to get started in the mechanical keyboards hobby. Okay, did that make sense? Let's get started. Okay, now I'm gonna tell you the tools you're gonna need to build your mechanical keyboard. Okay, so the first tool you're gonna need is a soldering iron. And of course, you cannot solder your mechanical keyboard without a good soldering iron. Please do not get a cheap and crap soldering iron. I've seen so many fire lighters and these things that glow red hot for no reason. And you need to stop buying the soldering irons because you will break your keyboard. I need some solder and some good 60/40 quality leaded solder. Do not get unleaded solder because I promise you, you will not get a good looking keyboard. Leaded solder is so good for beginners because you don't need a, let's just say, a high quality soldering iron, and it will allow you to solder your mechanical keyboard much easier. So sometimes when you solder, you might get stuck and you might stuff up and you will need to suck out the solder, and this is called a desoldering pump. So essentially what it does is sucks up the solder so you can remove the switch. Or you can also use some goot wick, or essentially wick, and that will suck up the solder by applying heat to it, and I'll show you how that works in just a few moments. So you also need some tweezers. These are just some metal tweezers that I have. Okay, that's all the tools you're gonna need to build this mechanical keyboard. So come on, yalla, let's get started and build this keyboard. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is test your PCB. So get a computer, get a cable, and your PCB. Get that cable connected and then connect it to your PCB. You're gonna go on Google and search for keyboardtest.com. All you're gonna do is test your keyboard. Get your tweezers and then go to the PCB and short the 2 contacts you see on every switch pad. And on your computer, you will see that it is actually registering. Now you wanna do this for the whole PCB, and if you notice one of the switches is not working, then it must be either some fault with these diodes right there, or there's something wrong with your chip here. So once you've tested your PCB, okay, you're essentially done. Stop. Hammer time. What you were gonna do just now is you're going to install the switches, right? Stop right there, because if you do that, you're not gonna be able to fix that mechanical keyboard, because you need to install the stabilizers first. If you do not install the stabilizers first, you are not gonna be able to fix or make this mechanical keyboard today, I promise you. So if you don't know what stabilizers are, they essentially allow your larger keys like your space bar and your backspace to remain stable. And a lot of cheaper keyboards have crappy ones, and that's why they sound like crap and they rattle like hell. So today I'm going to show you how to install them as well as lube them so they don't rattle and they feel super smooth. Okay, so the key to a good mechanical keyboard is its stabilizers, if I haven't made that clear already, right? So first, I'm just gonna show you how to build your stabilizers. So in your kit, right, you'll get around 5 bars, okay? And these are the metal bars. You can see them right here. So your bars are needed to ensure your keys go down very evenly. We need to make the stabilizer look like this. So there's 3 parts to a stabilizer. That's the stem, the casing, and of course the metal bar. Completed one side of the stabilizer, so now I'm going to show you how to do this other side here. So all you're going to do is get your stem and make sure that there's 2 holes lining up with this opening right here. So we're going to spin it around, then chuck it in there, and as you can see, that's properly aligned. So now all you're going to do is get your bar and you chuck it into the lowest hole of the stabilizer, not the higher hole, and then you put it in the holder and that will clip in, and there you go. There's a working stabilizer. So now you just do it for the rest of your stabilizers, and these will be 2.25 units. So they go on your backspace, okay, and your enter and other keys. Okay, so obviously you just built a stabilizer. That's awesome, and you won't have any problems installing it onto your PCB. But of course, I told you I was gonna lube them. So let's show you how to lube them. It's extremely simple. All we're going to do, literally, is lube the friction points where this slider rubs into this casing. So we're gonna lube these walls inside, literally all inside. And on this stem here, we're gonna lube inside of these channels and the walls here. This is 205G0 lube, and it's essentially a buttery lube that you use for switches and stabilizers. And it's a great, really good lube to use essentially for the whole keyboard. All I'm going to do is take literally a smidgen amount. This is enough. And I'm essentially going to lube this whole stabilizer with this amount of lube. All inside, all around it, making sure I'm covering all the surfaces. So just before you put your lubed stab and stem back into your bar, what you want to do is actually add some dielectric grease to this bar and then plop it and move it around inside of the bottom channel of your stem. And this will reduce any pinging with this bar, just like that. And there you go, that's your lube stabilizer. It's not gonna make loud pinging or barely any noise, and it's gonna be smooth as heck. So essentially we're gonna install them. Okay, so on your stabilizer, you will notice 2 things. You have the hook here on the left and you have the screw point on the right. What you do, you align the hook to the largest hole and the screw hole to the smallest hole. As you can see, that is sitting flush on the PCB now, and all you're gonna do is screw it onto the PCB. So with your kit, you will also get these rubber insert that you put on top, and that will protect this screw from shorting anything near it. So there's an easy way to tell if your stabilizers sound beautiful before you actually build your mechanical keyboard. So all you have to do is add a switch to the middle and then essentially get your space bar for your keycap kit and chuck it on there. And then what you can do is put it on like a rubbery surface so you can hear if you hear any pinging or anything like that, and that will mean you will need to lube it a bit more. So let's do that now. Okay, so I've installed and lubed all my stabilizers, and man, do they sound so smooth. So now all we have to do is install the switches onto the plate and get it onto this PCB so we can start to solder. And soldering is so easy, do not worry, do not be afraid, because I'm gonna teach you how to do it right now. Okay, so just before we solder though, we need to put our switches into our plate, okay, and make sure that the switches are in there properly And as well, I'm going to show you how to lube your switches. The first thing you might get confused about when you're putting in your switches is the placement of where the switches are on your PCB, because as you can probably tell, there's a lot of holes here. So what I like to do is when I put in the switches, just to make it so simple for you, you get your keycaps, okay? And you place them how you want it. So for example, this Tofu 96 PCB can support a longer backspace and also different placements of these alpha keys. And you need to know there's two types of layouts. There's ANSI, okay, which is just this rectangle you see on literally every single keyboard, and ISO, which is this big fat enter key here, and that is a different layout altogether. In this tutorial, I'm just gonna show you how to build a normal ANSI keyboard and nothing other than that, because you can easily search and check out the instructions for your kit to how to change your layout. So let's go install the switches. It's extremely simple. Okay, so to insert a switch, all you have to do is align these two pins and these pogo legs on the plastic pogo legs into the holes here. So what you do, you align it as best as you can, and then you can see we're about to push it down. So press it down, make sure that these two plastic legs are popping through, as well as these two switch pins right here. So you might be asking, oh, on the bottom row, I don't know where to put all these switches because there's so many holes and you don't know where to put it. Well, essentially all you have to do is get your keycaps, okay? And then you want to put the keycaps on the switches and then place them and make sure they're all evenly spaced. And then you can tell which hole it is, and then that will make sure you get these evenly spaced so you don't have to desolder the switches, which is a pain in the ass. So now what you will have to do is, if you want to lube your switches, follow this tutorial. Okay, so to open your switches is extremely simple. You can just 3D print a switch opener or purchase one, or you can find something a little bit sharp like a screwdriver or like this flat tool I've got here, and then start to pry open the switches on both sides. But an easy way is just literally to get a switch opener. It's literally 5 seconds. Just like that. So here is the 4 parts of a switch. You have the stem, the spring, the bottom casing, and the top casing. And that's all you need for a switch. So now all you have to get is some lube. This is 205G0 Krytox lube. It's essentially a buttery lube, and you can go check out my other lubrication tutorial on how to lube your switches. And I've got a literally extensive tutorial talking about different types of lube and how to make your switches feel amazing. But for now, I'm just gonna show you how to lube with 205G0. Open your lube. And as you can see, this is quite a buttery lube. So you can just get a normal paintbrush, literally any paintbrush. Literally just that amount is enough to lube one switch. So starting with the bottom casing, you get the lube and you go brush the sides where the switch rails sit. And you'll go up on both sides, striking them 3 to 4 times, and that will be enough lube on there. Then you can go to the center pillar or hole where the stem goes into and around it. So to lube your springs, what you can do is get one of the Ziploc bags you get with your kit, chuck it in there, and essentially what you can do is add some lube to the bottom part of this bag, and essentially you can move it by hand in the lube, okay? Or what you can do is just shake it vigorously. Then as you can see, that spring is now very, very well lubed, and you can chuck it into the bottom casing right here. The next thing you want to lube is these stems, and the most important thing on the stems is these rails on the side. So get some of your lube and then literally just go over it like that. Make sure you're getting a decent amount of lube on there. And because these are linear switches, you want to also lube these legs here. So I'm going to put a bit of lube here and then go to the other side where the rail sits. Now, as you can see, there's an extremely thin layer of lube, but that's literally all you need on there. You don't need more than that. So with tactile stems, you can tell that this tactile here, that has a bump in there, and the only reason you lube these legs if you want to make these legs more buttery. So on my switches, I've lubed them, but if you want to keep that tactility and the bump, do not lube the legs, only lube the walls from side to side and the faces here, and that's all, but do not touch the legs. With linear switches, you lube the legs as well, and that will provide a more smoother linear experience. And then the top case doesn't always have to be lubed, but I like to lube them. So what I do is I put my brush on the corners where the stem hits, these two corners here. And that's all. And then you just close up your switch. And then on this Gateron switch, the logo faces on the top and it's also facing the leaf. So that's how it closes. And then that's all. That's one lube switch. Okay, that was a super short tutorial on how to lube your switches, and I would prefer you go watch my really comprehensive tutorial on how to lube your switches properly, and you can go check out up here, or you can wait till the end of this video, and I would prefer that so you understand how to make a mechanical keyboard properly first. Okay, now for my favorite part, showing you guys how to solder. Really simple to solder. Honestly, just make sure you get a good soldering iron, so go check out my links in the description after this video to go find really high quality soldering irons from my website. And now let me show you the master at work. Listen, before you start soldering, make sure you put some safety gloves on, and also solder is really toxic, so make sure you actually put some glasses on because some solder splatter will hurt your eyes. And as well, the solder itself has these fluxes which are really bad for your health and bad for your lungs. So make sure you do this outside, or either have a fan blowing in your room so you don't smell it. Okay, let's solder. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is how people actually solder, because some of you guys are just not soldering in a way that's comfortable for you. So how do you get comfortable soldering? Firstly, when you solder, you don't hover, you don't put your hands up like this. You actually put your elbow onto the table so that when you're soldering, it's nice and comfortable and it's not shaking like I've seen a lot of people do on YouTube. Once you're in a comfortable position with your hand, then you adjust where your part is, or the keyboard, and you just put it down, and essentially you have the control of your hand now, and you're not shaking all over the place. The thing we're gonna do is turn on our soldering iron. So we're gonna set it to around 320 to 350 degrees. Now, it depends on what you're doing, where you are, what the surrounding temperature is, but that temperature is quite decent for nearly every situation. Okay, so with your soldering iron, you might be asking, okay, Joe, but what type of tip do I need to use for my soldering iron? If you want me to recommend you something, you can get the knife tip, you can get a bevel tip, right, which is just like a flat nose, and then also the chisel tip. And these three tips are really good for soldering anything that's through hole. But if you have like those conical tips, then don't worry, it will work as well. Okay, so before you even start to solder, what you need to do is check your soldering iron tip. You see how my tip is nice and shiny? If yours is not nice and shiny, what you want to do is get like a brass ball, do not use stainless steel, and just clean the tip and make sure it's nice and shiny. If your tip will not go nice and shiny like this, it means it's very oxidized and you might need to get a new tip or Google some other tutorials, but essentially it's gonna be very hard to solder your mechanical keyboard. You're gonna have troubles. So once you know you got a good tip, you got a good soldering iron, now you can start to solder. Now I'm gonna put the camera down and face the keyboard, and you can see exactly what I'm doing. What you're gonna do is bring your soldering iron to the pad, and what you're gonna do is rest your soldering iron between the pin and the pad. You're not shaking, you're literally pressing on there with medium force. As you can see, that's a perfect soldering joint because look at it, it's just concave. You can still see the pin and it's nice and shiny, and that's what you're looking for. This is how you want the pad to look like, not like this, which is a big fat blob. So in the same fashion, I'm putting it on to the pin and pad at the same time, then I'm adding solder on the opposite side. And then as you can see, it's heating up, letting go. That's 4 seconds in total to make a nice looking joint like that. And that's all you have to do. You can see those soldering joints are absolutely perfect. A concave mountain, and you can still see the pin. That's exactly what you're aiming for. Make sure you're placing your soldering iron on the pin and the pad at the same time. It needs to have heat to suck up the solder. Otherwise, it's gonna look bad and it's gonna go all bulgy and round, or it won't even solder. And if it still doesn't work out, you can use something called flux or flux pen, and that will help to suck up the solder a bit better. You essentially just dip it, dab it onto the soldering joint, and it will suck it up so much better. And if you need any help, be sure to join my Discord down below after this video, and I'll be happy to help you on soldering your mechanical keyboard. I'm pretty proud of my soldering today. Look at all those. Not one bulgy joint. Okay, so listen, you might get a dodgy or faulty switch on your mechanical keyboard after you've tested it. So I'm just gonna quickly show you now how to desolder the switches, and you use a desoldering pump. It's extremely simple. So you get your desoldering pump, you prime the plunger, okay? So it's ready to suck out the solder. It uses air to suck it out. So then what you do is you get your soldering iron and you place it on there, and then you press the button to release it, and that will suck up the solder. Okay, now to desolder, you need to heat up your iron to around 380 to 400 degrees because it needs to be quite hot, because you're using air to suck something out, and when you bring air to something hot, of course it's going to cool down. So now to desolder the switch, you essentially put your soldering iron onto the joint, and then you bring your desolder sucker on top and then suck it out. It's taken out the solder from the pin, and then you can essentially remove the switch. My soldering iron there, and then suck. Now all you need to do is remove the switch, and then you can replace it. Okay, that was also a very short tutorial on how to desolder the switches if they turn out to be bad or something's dodgy with them. So make sure you can watch the tutorial up there. I've got so many tutorials, so just be sure to check them out after the video if you're having any issues. I think this keyboard is gonna be one of the best mechanical keyboards I've made, and I can't wait to see how it sounds and how it feels. Okay, we are nearly finished. So all we have to do now is test the keyboard once more, and then we can chuck it in the case and do a typing test, or essentially we can just enjoy our beautiful new, nearly maybe $600-700 mechanical keyboard. I've reconnected it, and now all I've done is I've went back on keyboardtester.com, and now we're just gonna click all these switches here to ensure that it's all working. And my gosh, every single mechanical key on this keyboard is bloody working. So now the next step is getting this into the case. Just thought I'd show my collection. That essentially I've got this collection of really high quality wow sticks that if you want to go check out in the links in the description, you can, because they're really high quality and I really love them. They've got S2 bits, so they're not going to strip your screws, and I hate stripped screws. Obviously, it's quite easy to install your PCB into the case. You essentially slide the front first, and then you flop it like that, and you can see several screw holes line up, okay? And essentially all you have to do is screw them in. But what I suggest you do before you do anything like that is you put some keycaps on and align the PCB to the case. So as you can see, I put a keycap on every corner of this case. So before I screw it down, I know that when it's aligned, it's not gonna hit, the keycaps won't hit any part of the case. So firstly, you get the keycaps on there, align it and make sure it doesn't hit any of those, and then you can screw it down. Add a little bit of foam to the case so it dampens the sound inside the case. And I can't put too much because this is not exactly the right size I need, but it will be enough to dampen a little bit of that sound and make the PCB a little bit more rigid on the corners. Okay, we've just finished building the mechanical keyboard, but now we need to chuck on some keycaps. So I just want to give you some information about some really high quality keycaps. So most high quality keycap sets are double shot plastic, which means that there's 2 pieces of plastic for the legend. So that means that this legend won't rub out after time. And you see that a lot with some cheap gaming keyboards, and this is why the mechanical keyboards kind of hobby exists, because we wanted to pimp them out and make sure they last for a long time and feel amazing. So stick to thick PBT or ABS keycaps, make sure they're double shot or they're dye sublimated, and that they come from a reputable company that, you know, make sure that the legends are centered, you know, they're high quality, they look nice, and of course a color that you like. So we got the Sakura Michi from Tactile keycaps, but there's so many different companies you can go to, not just Tactile. So make sure you go check out the other links in the description below. Oh my gosh, isn't she beautiful? My name's Juju, and you just watched how to make your own mechanical keyboard, and we did that so well. The keyboard looks so beautiful. It's got a beautiful cable to go with it, and it sounds so Amazing. So now you go make your mechanical keyboard. I want to see your skills. I want you to solder like a pro. So go ahead. And then what you're gonna do is join my Discord below and you're gonna show me your setup and your keyboard and we're gonna see it together. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you very much for watching. Go check out my merch if you want in the links below on my website, tools, everything there. Otherwise, that's all from me. Yalla bye.